Andy,
What's up, man? How are you?
good. What's going on, my friend?
Nothing much. Good to hear from you. I was thinking about you a couple weeks back. I guess I should announce it as saying on the phone right now I have Dom Kreep, singer of the Kreeps, but also the leader of CHOP in Seattle. When I saw there was like a renegade group of guys taking over Seattle, I was like, wait a minute. I feel like Dom Kreep is behind this.
You thought I was leading the troops into action.
I had a feeling. I was like, wait a minute. A bunch of rebels up there? It sounds like a Dom Kreep thing to me.
You've got to start something here and there, haven't you? Every now and again. Just shake things up,
it's true. It's so true, man. It feels like it's crazy. Like I was just on the radio last night talking about my trip to Seattle, which feels like a lifetime ago now. But it was almost a year ago, and I got to meet you. We got to have drinks. It was a great time. But I feel like so much of the world has just completely changed since then. It feels like a decade in some ways.
I mean, I talk about this quite a lot with people, actually, Andy. I mean, every year feels like a decade at the moment,
Yeah.
And none so much than this past year. I mean, who could have foreseen all this stuff? Apart from the various people that have been weirdly talking about it a few months beforehand and perhaps 2 years beforehand. But it kind of went under the radar, as it were, and now here we are. It's been a new interesting thing on top of another new interesting thing in ways that we've never seen before.
It really has. I won't even check Twitter in the morning anymore because I used to wake up hoping for some hopeful news. Now I just wake up assuming the worst and go about my day.
Oh yeah, it's kind of too depressing in a way, isn't it? It's one of those situations where you hold your phone as far away as your face as you can and just kind of like delicately touch the notifications button and hope you don't get your face blown off. It's a really strange time.
It really is. And I feel like, speaking of like just phones in general, I mean, back in the day, I recall, when we first, had smartphones, you would get on your smartphone to escape reality. And I feel like now I turn the thing off to escape reality. It's completely flipped. And obviously 2020 has made that 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a big conversation at the moment with a lot of people that I've been speaking to where they've just been dropping off now because, it used to be a thing that I think people found their community through it to a degree. And I think that's still happening in some ways.
Oh, yeah.
But things have become quite divisive and poisonous to some degree. And a lot of people are just saying, this is zero fun anymore. I liked it when people just spoke to each other in good faith.
Yeah.
And there's little of that going on, so I think a lot of people are dropping off too, so also an interesting aspect of the time we're living in.
Yeah, it really truly is. Because, I feel like anymore, it's like you can say, even when it comes to like certain things on Twitter, you could make a joke and it could be taken the wrong way. There's just so much negativity online. I just feel like I'm the same. I'll get on there and maybe post a funny joke that I think is pretty funny or just like promote something. But yeah, I think the days of really trying to get on, Twitter and make, it's like, I'm kind of just going to lay low, and if something comes up I want to promote, I'll just focus on that. And it's interesting, Dom, too, because you're one of the artists. There's been a few artists I've had on my show because, I can't have guests in the studio anymore, so I've been doing the via phone thing. You're one of the artists that, like, you released a record right at the very beginning of this. And I got to say, it's like funny how that works. I got to say, Moonstand Still Us Fools Prefer Darkness is one of my favorite records of the year. And I'm not just saying that because we're friends. It genuinely is a great record. But I feel like...
Oh, my God. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. And we had a lot of talks, whenever I was up in Seattle over drinks that night about the music industry and how things are tough and just all the conversations that, young rockers like us would have. And who knew that this would happen? So how has it been for you to put out a record? Because you waited a while to put that thing out. How has it been putting it out, and how has the response been? What are the frustrations you've had with releasing a record at a time like this?
Oh, the irony, my friend, the irony. I did wait for a while, as you know, to put this thing out. And, I just wanted to make sure I'd dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. And, I had it exactly as I wanted it. And, then obviously there's the vinyl pressing sometimes takes quite a while to get all that process done. So by the time it was ready to go, I put it out, and then all of a sudden COVID became the hot topic. And to be honest, as much as it was exciting for me to get that music out there, I felt like this was so big that it seemed ridiculous for me to try and push anything at that point.
Yeah.
So it sounds like an odd thing, but promoting it went almost to the back of my mind. And I thought, well, the people who want to hear this will find it.
Yeah.
And for the best part, that's been true. The record was received really, really well by fans of Kreeps, and I also somehow gained quite a few new people who got on board with it. I don't fully know how that happened because I really wasn't too active in pushing it, and I know that sounds really retroactive, and like a negative thing for someone who's putting out a record. But the world kind of turned upside down, and I didn't really know what to think of it. And obviously, there were much more pressing things happening, so I kind of let it go organically, And for the most part, the people who were really into previous Kreeps work really, really loved it. And I figured that was just about as good a response as any that I could get without, obviously, the tools available to, then to start touring a record or, all those kinds of things. So, a little disappointed that it came out at a point where such crushing social change came, but also, obviously that was a bigger thing happening in the world at that time, and at least it's still out there and available for people, and people really responded to it quite well. So, I'm happy with that personally right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of times when things like this happen, and I always compare it to around, I'm sure you remember around the time of 9/11, whenever that happened back in 2001, the music industry kind of froze up, not in the sense that it has now because you could still play shows, but it definitely froze up. A lot of songs that were going to be singles were taken off because they were viewed as insensitive to what had happened. And so a lot of artists got dropped and a lot of things changed. But I think the difference of now and then is back then bands didn't have social media. I have a couple friends who were on major labels back then and got dropped, and it was just kind of over. So I feel like now it's like, at least, like you said, it can exist and it's out. And, sometimes people, when things happen, they tend to go to music and gravitate to music in a much heavier way than otherwise they may just been out having the greatest summer of their lives. But now they can't, so they can sit at home and search for new records. And there you go, the new Kreeps record. It's got a gloomy vibe to it. Boom.
It's really quite amazing. I think, there's a lot of pros and cons with kind of the way that the music industry has been adapted into like internet culture and things like that in certain ways. But I guess one of the greatest things is the fact that creators can make things and they can be discovered at literally any time. I mean, I'm sure that it was great for a lot of people to be on these major labels and things like that back in the day when perhaps the checks were good, but the bottlenecks to get into that industry were much harder to get through. Oh, yeah. But, if you had a record out 10 years ago, it probably did its thing at the time, and then for the most part, unless it was a classic or something like that, or really heavily pushed or adopted by music lovers, it probably just kind of went by without a trace. But now, I've seen bands have whole career resurgences because of a record they made 20 years ago that suddenly either got like a promotional spot on an advert or in a film or something, and all of a sudden there's all these new people who can just search that out and find it straight away. So I think as a creator, that's really satisfying, and you don't need anyone to tell you that you can do it because you just can, Yeah. And anytime you want to put your ideas out there, it's available for you, and it's available for you to experience other people's work too. So I think that's a really important thing, especially right now. I'm sure that the tensions are high. People's creativity is probably high, and it's a form of communication, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I feel like, young bands today will never know the battle for distribution. That was such a big deal. They're going to get us in Sam Goody. This is huge. And now it's like, everyone has the distribution to get it out to as many people as they're willing to try to get it out to. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's an interesting time. And I think it's good that this all happened now. I mean, because I feel like if this had happened, 20 years ago, I think we really would have felt disconnected. Right now, like we were saying with social media, you kind of have the opportunity to be connected if you choose so to be,
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, I know that a lot of artists as well, they're kind of doing this thing where they'll literally just like do a webcast from their living room or whatever. And, you know, here's
Yeah.
a few songs. And like, however would that have happened in the past, you know? Like
Yeah.
I say, there's all these avenues that you can tap into, and, you know, we can all connect. And, you know, it's kind of bizarre that you can also talk directly to people in that way too, that you never would have had access to before. You know, fans and creators alike. It's been really interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And one thing you've been working on too that I don't know how much we can say about this because I know it's not actually out, but I did see it on your Instagram, so I can always edit this out if we're not allowed to talk about it. But I'm really curious about this show you made the score for, Long Gone Gulch. Is that the name of the show?
That is, yeah. Yeah, I think we can talk about it for the most part. I had the opportunity a little while ago. It's been slow coming. It is a show created by these incredible two animators and artists, Zach Bellissimo from Cartoon Network and Tara Billinger from Disney. They came up with their own idea.
Oh, nice.
As creators, made their own show. And yeah, they hit me up to do the score for a whole pilot episode that they already had funded. And it's been a long process for them, I think, because one of the things is that it's mostly all hands on. I think they went really old school on it and did everything by hand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the animation industry has moved way more towards computer style animation and things like that. But yeah, they're really big fans of like early 90s cartoons like Ren and Stimpy and such.
Oh, love that.
And so they're taking a lot of their influences from that kind of stuff. And they're also, interestingly, into a lot of kind of your spaghetti western, kind of Ennio Morricone, you know, Clint Eastwood style western movies. And so they really were into those soundtracks in a very deep and rich way, and they wanted something that really fit in with their ideas, and you know, and kind of brought the world together in that way. And yeah, they called me up one day. They said, "Hey, you know, when we were creating this thing, we were listening to Kreeps records on rotation, and we really were talking one day about how could we get that kind of sound on our project." And I guess somebody in the crew said, "Well, why don't you just ask the guy?" You know, harking back to what we were saying on about the internet platforms that you can just talk directly to people that you know you wouldn't have been able to in the past, or at least it would have been quite difficult to find them.
Yeah.
They just, you know, mailed me straight away and just like, "Hey, you know, just check this thing out and we'd love to have you work on it." And I absolutely love the concept and the fact that they were really into that deep kind of twangy Western rich soundscape of those old soundtracks. And so, yeah, I really leaned into it. You know, I've always loved animation. And when I was a lot younger, I always thought it would be one of the funnest things to do. And then I've had a couple of opportunities to do it, once with Frederator and Sony, and now with these guys. And it turns out that, yes, it is actually one of the funnest things to do with music.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any idea when the show, they're pitching the show right now, I believe, or does it have like a date to be released, or?
Currently, I believe they want to try, I think they want to try and release it as soon as possible because it's been such a long time coming. I mean, they each have quite intense day jobs and it's a small crew. And I believe within the next couple of months it may be dropping, but I'm not entirely sure about that. So
nice.
Keep your eyes peeled, though. It's coming soon. It's coming soon.
Absolutely. I can't wait, man. Because the people who don't know out there in Radio Land, the Kreeps, you have a long history of doing like stuff with like soundtracks. That's actually how I found out about your band. Was the video game Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare was a game that I played quite a bit, and you guys had a song on there, Bad Voodoo, and it always seems like your music just lends well to that sort of thing. I mean, the songs are great and they just fit so well in that situation. So I think it's cool to see you doing something else. And it's funny, Dom, I think of you every single month lately because at the very beginning of this pandemic thing, I was staying home a lot like everybody else. And I went ahead and got a PS4 subscription so I could play the new Red Dead Redemption online. And I keep forgetting to cancel it. But every single month I get that bill, it takes it out of my account. So every single month I think about you.
God, God damn it. They're like, oh, I don't want to send that guy another royalty check.
I'm like, enjoy that payday, Bar Dom. It's on me.
Oh my God. Yeah. I have you to thank for all that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, because actually I should tell you, today officially I've been on the radio 6 years. This is like my 6-year celebration
congratulations.
show. Thanks, man. And it's funny because when I first got this gig, I had no experience in radio. I was just a drummer in a band, and it was one of those situations where I didn't realize I could play whatever I wanted. And then once I realized that, I started thinking of all these bands that I love, and I'll never forget thinking I should play. I think it was Supernova that I added because Spirit Clinic had just came out around that time. And so it was really cool to add that song and then becoming friends with you. And it's just funny how all that kind of spiraled just from an accidental radio job. So I thought it'd be cool to have you on tonight because it's just such a random friendship that came from that.
It's so funny, and I really, really appreciate your support. It's so hard for any creative, even with like a backlog of minor successes, to poke through the noise. I guess one of the things that you could say, which is kind of difficult with that such easy access creative authorship, is that there's so much stuff now.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to poke through and get people to notice. And so I'll always be really, truly thankful that, you picked up on what I was doing and started playing it of your own volition. And, man, it is really quite something as well that you get to do that. I recognize how rare of a thing that is for people these days to be on the radio and still get to play what they want to play. I'm fortunate that out here in Seattle, we have KEXP, which is a great station also, as well as yours. And it's one of those rare situations where those DJs get to program whatever they want. And that's just not the case for the most part. And I've been lucky to have quite a few plays there. But, it takes people like them and like you to keep music going because, I think everybody knows what like so many of these stations are like. They've got to play the same 5 songs, all the time and get that advertiser money in. And it is what it is. But every now and again, people come along like you and they really root for the music they really love. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, dude, absolutely, man. And I'm glad that you noticed that because I feel like it is rare, especially in like AAA radio world. It's very rare. And I've had people ask me, are you going to, retire from the show? Are you going to tap someone else to take over? And I'm always like, I'm just going to keep doing it. You guys have to pry this show away from my dead hands.
It's amazing that you have such a passion for it continually, because anything like that is hard, right? How long have you been doing that now? 6 years?
Yeah.
And, that's a lot of programming,
Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of it comes from, honestly, I think it's the background of being a musician. Because obviously, I was in a band that did rather well and had some success. But there was a whole decade before that of just miserably trying to get some attention and begging radio stations to play our stuff. And I actually was the booking agent for my old band before the band I'm in now. And so I think it just comes from that. I think it comes from, I do this thing every week on the show where I find like a brand new band in town and I don't let them know I'm going to play their song. And I tweet at them 5 minutes before I play it because I want to give them that, that thing you do moment where they hear themselves on the radio unexpectedly. Yeah. And I love doing it every single week. So I think it comes from just the musician background in me where I know how important that and how hard that can be at times. So that's probably where that comes from.
It's really powerful, and I think that people like you really understand what it means to creators to even get so much as a nod from someone who has the authority to be a tastemaker and say to people, hey, you like music, I love music, here's what I like, maybe you will like this too. And again, like I was saying before, I think that's becoming rarer and rarer. And, it's really special what you have, I think. And obviously you understand that from the inside too. And it's kind of funny, even when I'm not, even when I can't get in touch with the show or hear what it is that you're doing, still every time I see the little tweet that you say, oh, up next is the Kreeps and stuff, it's really heartwarming to see that someone's out there, playing the stuff, giving it some attention and, saying to people, hey, this is what I like. Hopefully you'll like it too,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love live tweeting. It's a good way to get bands' attention too, in case they don't hear it, because so much is not live anymore. So I'm glad that that you noticed that. And one of my favorite songs off of your new record, like I said, I love the whole thing. I think it's great. And I really love the song Exorcist Blues, which is the last song on the album. And I love the fact that it's 8 minutes. We've played it on this show a couple times because radio
did that.
because radio rules mean nothing. So we played it, I mean, Hotel California was like 6.5, so it's not that much longer. But I love that song. I wanted to ask you this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, so if this is a question that throws you off, feel free to take your time to answer it. But I love the lyric in the song Exorcist Blues where you say, play that song at my funeral. And I wanted to ask you, is there a certain song that you think of whenever you think of that? Like, is there a certain song you'd like to have played at your funeral, Dom? Not to get dark, but I've always wondered that.
Ooh, that is a good one. I think the difficulty with answering this question is that Exorcist Blues really was kind of a lament where I was trying to conjure up kind of like a togetherness about drawing people together, knowing that the times are difficult, and there's something just super strange in the air, and we don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes things look really bleak,
Yeah.
But there are times when we can come together through our appreciation of art or producing art ourselves. And what am I trying to say here? It was more of a nod to this kind of song of our times that everybody can kind of tap into and understand.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of the idea of a song that kind of sums up what our humanity is right now.
Yeah.
I think that is the song that I would want played at my funeral, because whatever it was I was thinking about was something that could hopefully bring us all together in our mutual understanding that would bring society together, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry if that was a bit rambling and strange.
No, I love it.
That's what I was thinking about during the end of the song with all the, I had a chorus of people from the Sisters of Providence choir singing along with me. And it was just a simple refrain, but it was something that sounded like a lamenting togetherness, that we're all in this together. It's a tough time. We're trying to get through it, and whatever that song is, that's what I was trying to evoke.
Yeah.
And that is the song that would be played at my funeral, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. I totally get what you're saying. And I think it's a really great way to wrap up the record, too. I mean, it's just one of those songs. I mean, the whole thing is very great and it has peaks and valleys. And I just think that's such a great way to end it. I mean, the fact that it's 8 minutes long is great because you don't even notice that. Like, to me, it doesn't feel... Like, I've had songs people send me before that are like 8 minutes, and I'm like, man, this song could have ended 6.5 minutes ago. But, but that one doesn't feel that way. So I was really stoked to play. I played it a few times, and it's definitely one of my favorites. And also, I should point out, I really appreciate, Dom, you including me in the thank yous in that vinyl. It's actually the first vinyl I framed at my apartment. I have it framed because of that. Yeah, so thank you for the thank you. I appreciate that. I wish more bands would do that. That was very meaningful to me.
Oh, of course. Well, Andy, it's, we have met. Face to face, of course, and we got on great, and I consider you a friend now.
Yeah, you too, man.
But even before that happened, I felt like it was important to acknowledge the fact that you had picked up so much of what I was doing, and really had supported it. I always think it's important to just say, "Hey, thank you very much," and long may that continue.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it means a lot. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Anytime somebody notices that you notice their stuff, it always means a lot, man. I really do appreciate that. I wanted to ask you one more thing, man, which, again, thank you for calling in tonight. I appreciate you calling in, and it was great to have you. Always great to have you on the show, always. I know 2020 is kind of a wash of a year and a lot of things, but I do feel like music is still kind of shining pretty strong. And so I wanted to ask you, is there anything that's come out in 2020 that you've been listening to a lot lately? Any new bands or any new songs that you've really liked this year?
Oh, God, that is a tough one. And I'm going to hate to say that I think during this whole thing, I have done the comfort thing of going back to old classics.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think that is a reaction to just needing something familiar in this time when everything is really changing so much. But, one thing I have been doing, though, is I'm always on a quest to find new and interesting music. And by new and interesting, I don't necessarily mean it came out just now. I'm always looking into the endless cavern of forgotten gems. One of my favorite things to do is look through several labels, catalogs, labels like the Numero Group and Light in the Attic and places like that really search out these old forgotten gems of music. And sometimes these things are from private presses that never really saw a proper release. And some incredible music came out. Most of the stuff that I'm drawn to typically is really old music. One of the ones that I can think of recently, that really, springs to mind is the Donnie and Joe Emerson album "Dreamin' Wild," which had an amazing song called "Baby" on it, which is like it should have been a massive soul super hit, but just never was, and it was a private press. And I would encourage anybody to check that out. But
absolutely,
a lot of the stuff that I've been getting into has been like old dub reggae, old soul music, a lot of Afrobeat. But I will say, in the Afrobeat terms, Anti-Ballast put out a great record just recently. I don't know if it was 2020, but it was the most recent thing I can think of. And Anti-Ballast, a great Afrobeat group from New York, and fantastic live show. If you ever get a chance to see them, please do.
Absolutely. You know what's funny too, Dom, is I'm the same as you. Like, I find myself always kind of going back to older stuff. I mean, obviously my job makes me have to kind of be more active about finding new stuff. But I've always, you get older, it happens, and like I just like what I like. But one thing that's funny is I love how Spotify, if anything, Spotify kind of encourages you to stay in your box, because like I'll get up and I'll like be driving somewhere and I'll be like trying to look at my new music release radar thing, but it's always like right above it. It's like, or dive back into Soul Asylum again, like you did like you've been doing for the past 2 months. So it's funny.
They're
how
always
it
encouraging your old habits.
Yeah, it just brings you right back to where I could do that, or I could just listen to this again. So it's funny how, if anything, I feel like sometimes the whole idea of knowing that all the apps kind of cater to your taste, it kind of keeps you in a certain box too, which I have to really honestly focus hard to break out of, because I'm so bad about, like, I'll just listen to, why not some more of that, some more 90s music,
Yeah, it's really, really difficult, isn't it? Again, one of the things that I've been finding really helpful, though, speaking of Spotify, is some of those labels that I was speaking about. They curate their own playlists based off like the old forgotten gems and things like that.
That's awesome.
I never feel a loss for new, interesting sounds, even though they may not be brand new. Although while we're talking right now, I think a couple of albums have actually sprung to mind. One group that I've come across recently, I don't know quite how to pronounce the name, but I think they're called Crime Bin. I think it's a Thai word.
Okay.
But they're super amazing, very stripped down act, just bass guitar and a drummer. Real kind of gentle 70s style kind of soul grooves, mostly instrumental. Also, just as an aside, if jazz is anyone's thing, I know this is a rock station, but the guy that plays the flute and the saxophone and all the Kreeps stuff, Chip Wickham, amazing Latin jazz musician, and he had a fantastic record out this past year called Red to Blue.
Oh, nice.
And if anyone likes to kind of traverse all the different musical styles like I do, that's definitely one to look at. He really blew people out of the water with that one this year.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Very cool. And also, so what's 2021 looking like? I know 2020 is kind of a wash, but I mean, any plans for 2021 for Kreeps? I mean, you thinking maybe another record? Maybe, I mean, I know you don't do a lot of shows, but maybe some shows in the future?
I've been thinking about it, and I think one of the things about this COVID thing is that, we're all so locked down that it's really put a focus on what it actually means to be social face-to-face, right? I mean, one of the things that has been strange this past couple of years has been, I feel like, part of the internet as well that has been kind of feeding this growing isolation where people, we talk to each other all the time through text and through various social media platforms. So it feels like you're constantly with your friends, but you're not,
Yeah.
And it's made it pretty special when you do see them. And it's made me think a lot more about shows. Even though I don't do a lot, it's made me think that maybe I should start thinking about doing that more, because those face-to-face experiences and connecting with people seems way more important now than it ever was. It's almost like we had a luxury of not having to do it, for a while. So I'm definitely thinking about that. Later this year, I'm looking forward to Long Gone Gulch coming out. There'll be a new Greene County Coroner's album at some point.
Oh, nice.
Soon, which is, for those who haven't heard of it, that is kind of my instrumental surf electronica-ish project.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Basically, I just imagine an exploitation, crazy grindhouse music in my head and film in my head and try and make the soundtrack for it. And that's a more fun thing that I do. And so I think there's going to be that and a new Greene County Coroner's comic book to go with it.
Oh, awesome.
So that's kind of what's coming up in the near-ish future. Too far away, I can't really tell, but that's what's going on right now.
Yeah. And it's funny you said that about shows, because my new band, we're called Great American Canyon Band. We were out doing some shows. Last October, we were opening for the Gin Blossoms. We were out doing that thing with them. And I remember we played in October. We did one last night at New Orleans House of Blues. And I remember having this moment on stage. There's like a really chill song where like the drums is just like a kick drum. And the crowd was like, it was sold out. The crowd was all silent during our set, which, was great. Like they're really digging it. And I had this moment where I was like, man, like how privileged am I to be on a sold out stage right now, at my age and just to be still doing music. But now that this has happened, I'm even more thankful for that moment. So I feel like you're right. It's like, I think we all took for granted, playing shows or not playing shows. And so now it's like, yeah, I feel like we all, even if you're like some people are totally over music, now they want to play shows. So I totally get it too, man.
Exactly. I mean, I think that, there's a certain aspect to music how it's super exhilarating to play live, isn't it, and really connect with your audience. But at the same time, there's another side of it where, touring is so crushingly exhausting, as much as it's such a pleasure to do it. And so I can really see how, in, quote unquote, the before times when we didn't have to worry about this kind of thing. And, you could go to a show every week if you wanted to, but you probably didn't, because you had that luxury. It was easy to kind of think, maybe I won't. But now, you're starting to feel that pull of wanting to be social and wanting to connect with people so much more, and wanting to experience those shows and experience music in a way that isn't just, playing it in your living room or, listening on your headphones. You want to actually feel those vibrations pulsing through your body and like feel the crowd's energy and all that kind of stuff. I think those are the things that we're missing now. And maybe we didn't realize how important that was to us.
Oh, yeah. Coming out with a different perspective. I think 2021 is going to lead to a lot of different perspectives and a lot of people really not taking it. Even me, like there were so many times, man, that I'd be up here working late and somebody would be like, yo, I'm playing at midnight, at whatever club. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll come by. And I would just go home. But now when that happens, when all this turns around, I'm going straight to that show and I'm going to stay up all night and watch them play. It's going to be great.
Exactly. I mean, life has a funny way of reminding us what's important to us, right? Whether it's meeting up with our friends more regularly or supporting the arts or, going seeing a new movie or whatever it is, just, keeping those social things alive. It's super important. And, it's been impressive, really, how people have kind of adapted to it, although I don't think that it's probably healthy for us long term.
Yeah.
So hopefully the situation will get better sooner rather than later. Hopefully humanity will come together and really get over this thing, and we can get back to a time when hopefully we'll move forward with more of an appreciation of what we had.
Yeah, absolutely. And if not, I feel like you and I can just all join you in CHOP and we can just start our own country.
I think it's played out now, though, isn't it? But, maybe we can just start it all over again.
Yeah.
We'll do the musical chop.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Dom, I appreciate you calling in, man. Go check out the record out. Moon Stands Still, Us Fools Prefer Darkness. Watch out for Long Gone Gulch coming out. But honestly, man, I really appreciate you calling in. I appreciate your friendship. And I mean, when all this stuff passes, hopefully we can get you in Nashville and get you live in the studio sometime, man. I would love to have that happen.
If we can do that, man, I'll just fly in for some beers. I don't care, at this point, But yeah, it's been great to speak to you again, Andy, and hopefully I'll see you sooner rather than later face to face.